Hi, everyone, and welcome to this video from the Texas Commission on the Arts. We have created this series of videos for students and teachers to help prepare for the Poetry Out Loud competition. My name is Derek Mudd, and I'm a program administrator at the Texas Commission on the Arts, or TCA. TCA is the state agency for arts in Texas, and we conduct the state Poetry Out Loud competition that feeds into the national competition. Today's session is called Parallels in Music and Poetry, and our presenter today is Kamica King. Kamica King is a soul singer-songwriter, a musical storyteller, and captivating speaker. Kamica has performed for the Kennedy Center's Arts Across America virtual series, as well as at the US Open, Carnegie Hall in South Africa, and TEDx. She's an official artist of the city of Dallas and is on the Texas State touring roster. A social entrepreneur and activist centering healing, inclusion, and community building through the arts, Kamica is the founder of Musically Me Unlimited, a music-centered self-empowerment program for youth of color, and is the artist and board-certified music therapist behind music-based socio-emotional wellness company, King Creative Arts Expressions. Kamica, thank you for being here today.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me. So the musicality of poetry. When I was thinking about what to present here, I thought about the ways that there are parallels anytime it comes to performance, whether we're adding melody and harmony like we would in singing and elements of music, or if it's straight up speaking and recitation like the poetry we're talking about. There are basic tenets and elements that are universal to both, and that's what I'll be talking about today. So first up is rhythm. As it applies to poetry, think about it as the timing of your phrases, as well as the order and time through which your words are organized. So in other words, it's like the beat of the poem, loosely speaking. So I'll give you a musical rhythmic example here. So this would be a rhythm. And everything goes back to the repetition of that pattern, and everything fits within that standard, the beat of the poem. Everything fits within that box, so to speak, the meter, the metric. If you were looking at sheet music, it would be, your bars that you have. So another way to think about it is your poem conversational? Is your poem something that rhymes when we talk about rhythm? If it's something that rhymes, you want to make sure that it's not monotonous. The stars in the sky remind me of why I live, I love, I dream. The future is bright as I look towards the sky. How can you really bring it to life within that rhythm and find other ways to say it that really provide that rhythmic springboard? So the stars in the sky remind me of why I live, I love, and I dream. The future is bright as I look towards the sky. I live, I love, and I dream. So I made sure that just as we had our beats before, that the phrases, and we'll talk about phrases a little bit more later, fit into that. They fit into that there. Another element that often goes along with rhythm is tempo. So the tempo, the way that it differs, it's about the speed. And in this instance, the speed at which you deliver your poem, but it's within that set rhythm. So we'll still have our rhythmic pattern, but our tempo says, okay, this is our set tempo. What if we slowed it down? Or sped it up? So those are your different tempos, whether fast or slow. Our rhythm stayed the same, but the speed or slowness at which it was delivered is what made that difference there. So think about that when you're saying your poem and you're thinking of, okay, well, how do I deliver this? These are words on a page. How do I really bring it to life? One of the things you want to think about is, what is the heart of the poem? What does the content say? Thinking about it, line by line, the context, the writer, and the character that you're embodying while you're delivering it. Utilize those elements to help you determine what's a good tempo. When we're nervous, we may tend to speed up just naturally. It might get anxious, and that comes out in very rapid speech. So, for example, if you know that you might have a tendency to do that, think about how can you really be mindful and draw it back so it's not too fast that the meaning is lost. And on the other hand, you don't want to be so slow in what you're doing that it might get, just to speak very plain, it might get boring. Then you want to be as lively as you need to be. And lively isn't just animated or over the top, but it can be a stillness in your delivery. It can be just the potency of how you say what you say, and even thinking about what is the speed at which I'm going to deliver this. Other things to think about, pitch. Your tone of voice, is it low? Is it high? And those are some things that are just natural. If we were talking about singing and music, it would be something a little bit different. But when it comes to the spoken word of poetry recitation, when we talk about your tone of voice, it's what is it naturally? So if you had a low note, that's a pitch right there. If you have a high note, that's higher. That's pitch right there as well. Then there's this other element called timbre. So timbre is about the quality of the sound, or what's also known as the color of it. So the pitch is high and low when you get onto a scale. But the timbre is, well, how is that being delivered? Think about it as if you had a crayon box. The timbre says that the color is red, but really when you dive into it, what kind of red is it? And that really actually is what the heart of timbre is. So is it fire engine red? Is it smoking red hot red? And that comes to the color that you add. So when you're speaking your words, there's ways that you might make it a little bit more breathy in what you're saying, because it's an important point that you want people to really hone in on. That's the color. I didn't change the pitch. My tone was the same, but I changed the way that I was saying what I was saying. I changed the color and the quality of the sound by accessing a different area, by doing something a little bit different in how I was placing the air that was carrying the sound out. All right. So another thing to think about, and this is super important when it comes to poetry recitation, the dynamics. So in music, we have something called crescendos and decrescendos. And on the sheet music, it tells us when we're supposed to, in a crescendo, you want to get louder. So you see like I might be flipped, but the greater than, less than, you're getting greater than. You're gonna say a phrase, but you're gonna get louder right there. Versus the crescendo, you're somewhere right here, and then you're going to get softer. So think about it as the changes or the swells that happen in the music, or we can say in the poetry, where you might get louder or softer as indicated, where it makes sense. So again, you want to do the breakdown line by line and stanza by stanza to really have a good understanding of where do these make sense? Because you don't want to cram a bunch of tips and techniques in when it may not be applicable to the heart of the content, like the theme of the poem that you're doing. And you also don't want it to come across as contrived or fake or anything like that. You want to be really natural. And those are the things that are going to help you to get more points when you really embody and make very specific and intentional choices when it comes to the different nuances and flavor, dynamics, timbre that you're going to infuse into your poem to continue to bring it to life. You can think of that as the changes in emotional intensity, for example. And I'll do a quick time check here with Derek.
Yeah, you've got you've got about 10 minutes.
About 10 minutes. Okay, great.
Yeah.
I hadn't looked at the time when we got started exactly, so I said I better better see and get an understanding there. So thank you so much for that. Let's head along to the next slide. So phrasing. The parts of your passages or your sentences that go together to properly convey the meaning. So a fun example of this would be there's a song that I've written called Live, Love, Dream. So if I just take the lyrics of that, the lyrics say, the stars in the sky remind me of why I live, I love, and I dream. So if I were to mix up my phrasing and not follow it, it might come out like a jumble. And that jumble might be the stars in the sky remind me of why I live, I love, I dream. You're like, what? That was word soup. But you might say, well, I might say, well, I read the words on the page, like I'm reciting the words on the page as they are. But yeah, the phrasing shows you what is supposed to go together and how. So that's something that you want to think about to translate over to your poem as well. Not the stars in the sky remind me of why but the stars in the sky remind me of why I live, I love, and I dream. So just a quick example of that. Let me check my notes here. Yeah, here's another thing you can think about. What is natural to your sentence structure? How would it normally be said in general speaking terms? But also, when it comes to poetry, you want to be mindful of, is there some type of poetic license that the author, the writer has taken that you need to be mindful of at the same way that might make it change just a little bit? So always be mindful if there are additional considerations. Rests. So in music, in between our phrases, you might see some notes that indicate this is a rest here. It's a symbol for a rest, a symbol for a space where you want to take a pause. If you've got a whole poem to do, it is not a speed reading challenge. So you want to take your time with it at the appropriate tempo within the rhythm that you set. And in some poems, there may be some changes to that rhythm. You don't want it to be monotonous. And the power of the pause for dramatic effect is something super special and something super beautiful that can emphasize what you just said. It also can be something that leaves the audience right on the edge of their seat, like, ooh, what's coming next? And is a tool, another tool to really be able to connect with the audience. So it's where you pause from one point to the next. And you can elicit different effects from where you choose to take those pauses. And I won't go too much into it. I know that there are some other poetry out loud materials where folks really dive deeply into that element, but it kind of comes like, to circle back to our same live, love, dream example. The stars in the sky remind me of why I live, I love, and I dream. having that pause in between in certain places, or even in between I live, I love, and I dream. I could have just said, the stars in the sky remind me of why I live, I love, and I dream. Now, both of them have some flavor to it, but one of them, in the first example that I gave, I'm pausing after I live, giving the audience an opportunity to maybe process I live and think about, is there a context where that applies to them? I love, giving a beat there for the same reasons, and then capping it off with I dream. Or if the phrase in and of itself is what is supposed to go together, it's not just singularly living, singularly loving, singularly dreaming, but it's in the context. These are like chains linked together. I live, I love, and I dream. You've got to do them all in an intertwined way. That might be a reason why then you say it all together. So those are different things that you can also keep in mind as you approach poetry that's been written by another in preparing to recite it, thinking about what are the ways that a pause, a beat, a rest is going to enhance what you're saying. And again, the importance of it is it in doing it in such a way that is in line with the intent of the program, of the poetry, of the poem. There we go. And that the way you're delivering it is in a way that highlights and enhances that, and not something that kind of changes the tone or the reasoning behind it. Because again, with regard to how you deliver it, what is going to be best received is how can you bring and breathe a fresh life into the words on the page as you bring it to life behind the microphone. And how are you going to help, by the choices that you make, the audience to be able to understand where you're coming from as a representative delivering the words of the poem? You know, the character work, or when we talk about the term embodying the message and the theme of the poem. In this instance, you're a messenger of those words. But beyond the words, you're a messenger of the message that collectively those words encompass. So I hope that the different tidbits that we went through in terms of borrowing some thoughts and ideas from music, that those are things you might study a little bit more deeply and think about, how does this apply to what I'm doing? Another thing, when you're looking to select the music, think about, rather than music, the poem, pardon me, my musician hat is trying to come out here, but we're talking about poetry. When you're looking to select the poem, think about too, what material most resonates with you. If it's something that's super far-fetched, it may take a lot more work to connect to and to deliver in a believable way. So a great leg up you can give yourself is simply to find work that is meaningful, impactful, powerful, or resonant to you on a personal level where possible. Those are the sorts of things that can really translate with the audience. And different material resonates with different people, but chances are, if it's something that resonates with you, is definitely going to be something that resonates with other people. It may be a literary work that now you're bringing to a new audience, or you're bringing it in a new way that drives the core message of it. It doesn't change it, but you being you and what you're bringing to it enhances the storytelling capacity and impact of the poetry. So another consideration, how can you check for these things? How can you make decisions about them in your preparation? So I talked a little bit about that just a moment ago, but there are some other things to consider as well. Record yourself. It may be uncomfortable. You may not want to, let's talk about audio, for example. You may not want to hear your voice. You may not like how it sounds necessarily, but what can that do? you might then want to make some changes to the timbre in some way, shape, or form in some places. And another element to it is the way that you presume or assume that you're delivering it as you just stand here and deliver something. When you record it, you can actually tell how I thought I sounded. Is that actually how I sound when I push play on this thing? I remember there was some music that I was looking up in a leisure capacity, some songs of yesteryear that I enjoyed when I was growing up. And I was like, let me look up the sheet music to this and start to play along with some of it. And it was fun. And these were songs that I really enjoyed. I recorded myself. I went back and I was like, that was fun. Maybe there's some of these songs that I need to add to my repertoire. I pushed play on a few of those. The answer was no. It's good for me to enjoy in the comfort of my own home, but it is not a song that fits my voice in the best way or the way that I had delivered it at that point in time. It didn't really suit it. There was another time where it was pretty late at night, but I was enjoying some music in the same fashion. And then I was like, that was cool. Maybe I'll post a clip online. And I hit play back on the audio and I said, it felt good when I was doing it, but as tired as I'm feeling right now, I can hear that in the audio that I just created. So, okay, maybe I'm not going to post this, but I do like the song. So I'm going to continue to work on it and make sure that I'm energized and maybe think about getting the proper rest before I try to tackle this song again. On the other hand, on a positive note, well, that's positive too, because that's constructive feedback, but to yourself. On the other hand, there was a random song that came on to a playlist I was listening to. Same thing, pulled up the sheet music, pulled up the chord chart, and played it. Recorded a little bit of myself playing it, played it back, and I was like, "Oh, I need to add that to my rep. I need to commit that to memory." So there's such power in recording yourself from the auditory standpoint and playing it back. And the reason that I mentioned the audio in particular, you're taking away the visual element for the time being, and you're just focusing on that vocal delivery. You're focusing on things like your phrasing and your cadence, you know, the rhythm, and all of those other elements. Like I was mentioning before, do you want to make a change to the timbre in some way, shape, or form? Are there certain dynamics that you want to have? Is there a rest you want to put somewhere? Is there certain emphasis that you want to share in some places? But then dial back and just do it at a general pace and term in other circumstances. But at the same time, video recording is super helpful. Another thing you can think of is doing it in the mirror. If you have access to a full length mirror, great. If it's only half, so be it. You use what you have. And while you're in the moment of delivering it, be looking at yourself. Are there a lot of gestures you're doing and you want to not be so tight and square, but be more relaxed, or do a few less hand gestures in real time? But then video recording it is also a great tool because you have the audio, you have the visual, and you're not like when you're in the mirror looking at yourself in real time and assessing yourself while you're also delivering the poem. And there's so many, like cognitively, so many things that are happening. So if you also have a video, maybe you set it up, you know, right there next to the mirror, or maybe you just do straight to the camera. As if you have the audience, you're not going to be able to see yourself while you're doing what you're doing. And then being able to go back and take a listen to and take a look at and make the tweaks as necessary. Show it to some friends and family. Do it in front of friends and family if you feel so inclined, and when you feel confident enough in what you're presenting. Folks that can, whether it's a teacher, a mentor, or family, can be able to give you some constructive feedback. But also there's power if it's not a mentor or teacher who's in the poetry world, because in certain instances, you're going to have not just judges, but an audience. So what does a general audience think? How are they receiving it? How are they connecting to it or not? And what adjustments can you make thereof? But at the end of the day, and in all this, and all the hard work you're going to put into it. When it's showtime, I want you to do one specific thing along with everything else going on. Enjoy yourself. Take your deep breaths as you need. Prepare yourself as you're going on stage, but enjoy the hard work you've put in and the performance that you're about to give. Give it your all, give it your best, and have fun. Thank you so much.
That was so great, Kamica. I love the idea of recording themselves to work on things. You know, sometimes when we're just practicing something by ourselves, we sometimes lose focus or trail off or something like that. And I always find that, you know, the recording experience kind of can also help like keep me focused on the work that I'm doing.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah, thank you for circling back to that point.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Kamica. Any final words for our contestants?
Congrats and kudos on your hard work. Put the hard work in and enjoy yourself, like I was saying at the end of the process. Huge, huge, huge accomplishment to be going through the process. And it's a journey. So you're going to learn as part of it. You're going to build and grow. And best wishes to you.
Well, thanks again, Kamica. And thank you for watching this video. We hope you will watch the rest of the videos in this series. If you or your school are interested in participating in the next Poetry Out Loud competition, please contact us at poetryoutloud@arts.texas.gov. Have a great day.